There may not be a bigger enigma in the NFL this year than the Cleveland Browns. And we're going to break it all down. And I think we have some agreement here from our guest today, Mr. Brett Kollmann, on the Cleveland Browns. And for me, as I told you guys before, it's the old phrase of fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. All that and more. Your latest Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And apparently the lady's very excited for today's guest. Your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Appreciate the nation of everydayers who make Locked On Browns their first listen. The subscriber amount just continues to get bigger and bigger with the anticipation of what should be, hopefully, a very good Cleveland Browns season. My suggestion is to join the everyday crowd, make Locked On Browns your first listen. Best way to do that is to subscribe to the YouTube channel, notifications on so the content drops. You're there to digest it. Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, at Locked On Browns. Of course, we're sitting here today down with Brett Kollmann. You can check out the film room on his YouTube page. You can also check out the bootleg football podcast over there as well. One of the best in the business. The work continues to grow. Now, rolling through social media the other day, and now obviously everybody here, what are we getting this time of year content wise? We're getting team previews, we are getting player rankings, coach rankings. So Brett's has out in most recently the AFC North team videos for this season, and watching the Browns one, I think you guys would find some similarities. I probably have to be a little bit more upbeat to keep all of you coming here every day. But this team is truly an enigma. I think that there's a lot of people that have confidence. I think there's a lot of people that have had confidence in this franchise before and had that basically kind of blow up in their faces. Offensively, you added more weapons. Hopefully there'll be more clarity to the player Deshaun Watson can be here in 2023. You're able to get everything in ahead of time. Last year was so weird as it was very limited in the summer. Then 11 weeks of no Deshaun Watson, then basically throwing him in there, trying to acclimate everything to him as opposed to what 10 other players have been doing for the first 11 games. So, Brett, the Browns offense here, and look, there is a lot of factors here because now we're getting to the spot here of the head coach. We're getting to the spot here of the future as well of the general manager. There is a lot at stake here for the Browns, and all of it, and it can come down to a new coordinator on defense, special teams, a whole bunch of new players on defense, new players on offense. But the story remains the same. It all comes down to the $232 million investment they made last season.
And not only that, but even though their roster is amazing, and I want to contextualize this by saying, on our podcast, we don't do record predictions. We more give ranges, right? We give ceiling and floor. My ceiling for this Browns team was 12 wins and making a run at the first seed. My floor was 7. And so they're one of the widest ranges out of anybody because, again, a lot of it comes down to how's Deshaun playing, but also a lot of it comes down to, can they survive their own division? Like the Bengals are the Bengals. The Steelers are significantly improved this year. You look at the investments they made at corner and offensive line. That was the two biggest needs. And the Ravens also should be better this year too because they've made significant improvements in their weaknesses. So the AFC North as a whole is an absolute destruction derby. I'd be surprised if anybody in the division does better than splitting with everybody else. So there's 3 losses right there. And then you look at the rest of the AFC they have to go through. You look at the NFC, the NFC division they have to go. Like it's a really, really hard schedule. So this could very easily be a 10-win team that's a wild card that still has the ability to do a lot of damage in the playoffs and go far. And so I guess my main message to Browns fans is the win-loss record during the season doesn't matter as much. You just need to get into the dance, because getting to the dance is going to be the hard part here in a very loaded AFC, and especially a loaded AFC North.
It's crazy the way it works out, because, I think with the Ravens, you talk about, well, what's the difference there? Obviously, it's clarity for the quarterback. Okay, if Lamar's back to where Lamar was a couple of years ago, when he was content with everything? Yes, they're putting a new offense, of course, but Lamar should go back to mostly being what we expect from Lamar. That's the biggest question mark right there for the Ravens. Question answered. The Steelers, yes, obviously they made improvements. They get improved quarterback play. All of a sudden, this is a team that probably looks vastly improved. In Cincinnati, it doesn't really matter who the other, 50 players on the roster are, as long as you have, obviously, Joe, you have Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins. They can substitute however they want on the other, 50 guys on the roster. That's what that team is built on. Ironically enough, the Browns do match up well there. But now, looking at this, the Browns put up last year 21.2 points per game. The crazy part is most of those points came during the Jacoby Brissett portion, as opposed to the Deshaun Watson portion, understandably. Two highest scoring teams in the NFL last year. The Kansas City Chiefs, 29.2, Philadelphia Eagles at 29.1. This team needs to find a way, and even still, they're 4.5 points per game behind what the Cincinnati Bengals put up. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can say, oh, maybe they'll kick a little better. The NFL is not about field goals. They got to get more points. And with Deshaun, with the weapons that'll be on the field, and you think about Samba, and like a lot of it just shakes your head. They can run sets where maybe Nick Chubb is the last focal point for the defense, which is not good. Mm-hmm. Certainly, there's points where Donovan Peoples-Jones could be the last, point of emphasis for the defense. They've done what they could do for Deshaun, and if you want to say it's rust or it just being away, obviously takes you away from the game. There has to be that jump there. And they truly have to find what they have in their offense that perfectly suits him, because there may be 10, 15 sets that they like to run. And at the end of the day, okay, we've done that for 3 years now, but this just does not work with him. So instead of this being pages 1, 2, and 3, this is now pages 401, 402, and 403.
I think, honestly, if they want to be more successful with Deshaun, a lot of it, they don't have to change a whole lot with the offense, right? This is a very outside zone centric team. They've always been an outside zone centric team under Kevin Stefanski. And you can do that kind of stuff still from shotgun if you line up correctly. I think the mistake that a lot of teams that try to run outside zone from shotgun make is they set the back at kind of a weird angle. And so it takes like a super shallow angle, and it's a tough angle for the running back. But, if you kind of keep the back a little bit deeper, or if you go into pistol, you can still run outside zone without having Deshaun, live under center. Because clearly, I think they believe that Deshaun's more comfortable in the gun, right? That being said, if you are in the gun, I do think that they are going to have to become a little bit more inside zone centric if you're going to have the running back kind of flanking Deshaun like directly, even like we see in most shotgun looks. And they were 32nd in inside zone last year. They were 11th in outside zone, 32nd in inside zone. So I think if they're going to make any sort of change to their run scheme, it's to incorporate more inside zone into it, just based on how I think they're going to be lining up. And from those inside zone looks, now you can mix in, the RPOs to Njoku, and Deshaun was a very, not, I don't want to say reliant, but like RPOs off inside zone were a pretty significant portion of the offense that he ran in Houston. He's very comfortable with those. It's a good way to kind of get cheap, easy yards without handing the ball off. Like, you're still getting 5 yards regardless, right? Whether it's going to a tight end or going to a running back. And so, like, all that to say, I think the changes that we see to the offense are not going to be super drastic. I think it's going to be outside zone from pistol, inside zone from shotgun, but more inside zone than Browns fans are used to seeing, and maybe more RPOs than Browns fans are used to seeing.
And look, you'd be foolish not to do it. Obviously, you made this commitment. You've got to make this offense his. And the general belief is he was once regarded as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's still only 27 years old. There's no belief that ability is just gone. And this is one thing that I get into this a lot with some. He didn't miss time because of injury. Like that is the one thing to be talked about. But it's not like it was, his arm almost fell off. Miraculously, the doctor saved him, or, had an ACL injury, blew out the other ACL while he was training his way back. He was healthy the entire time. So to just think that, and look, yes, did he look great last year? No, he did not. Is it maybe understandable? Was it maybe worse than some of us thought? All those answers, probably could be yes. But the overall belief is this player should still be there. Because it's not like there was a reason he was away from the game physically, and it took, this crazy rehab process to get him back, obviously. So we'll see the way it all plays out here. We're going to flip it up here. We're going to go to the defensive side of the ball here, because I think they basically said we hired Jim Schwartz and basically said, well, this is the Jim Schwartz blueprint. They kind of went out and did it. Question is how will it work out for them in the long run? Jeff Lloyd joined by Brett Kollmann here, the latest Locked On Browns. FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200. You can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all on an app that is safe, secure, and it's super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. As I said, we are joined here today, Brett Kollmann, of course, the Film Room Podcast, the Bootleg Football Podcast. Check everything out on the YouTube page. Very successful page. Brett does a fantastic job. And the other thing is everybody, and I know I talk about this with a lot of the Locked On guys here, you could pick up a lot of knowledge, and certainly something that's one thing. Look, I mean, we can all listen to everybody sit around and spill takes. But what I do like about Brett's work is, there's always something you can find something there that maybe you did not know, which is, as much as we're all into business, we like to get better, and obviously we're looking for something that's going to basically stimulate us. You go out, and there was no question here. And, and the Browns they're just not an organization that's going to show somebody the door essentially in the middle of the season. Was Joe Woods a perfect candidate of being shown the door last year? Absolutely. Because it could have been one where, look, we're just going to go on, move on. And it's just going to be, we're going to go with, basically the KISS theory of we're going to keep it simple, stupid, and just do what we can do. Then you get into, you knew you were going to move on. Now you're looking for a defensive coordinator, and to their credit, they went big name hunting. To their credit, they got a big name. And you brought in a defense coordinator who has a reputation on the defensive line, which was a big, big issue for this team in 2022. You did your work by bringing in players for this defensive coordinator. You have a secondary where you think you are really solid at cornerback, 3 deep, easy. You think you are really deep at safety, 3 deep, easy. You have defensive linemen. You have pass rushers. And just saying all these words, the first thing I think, Brett, is, well, this sounds like a Jim Schwartz defense.
Yeah, and Jim always had like a huge reputation for, playing the run on the way to the pass, right? Like that's where people associate him, because they look at like wide nines at defensive end, flying off the edges, super fast defensive tackles, linebackers just kind of sorting through trash and cleaning up the pieces, all that kind of stuff. But I do still want to let people know that's more like third down stuff. They don't really expand, other than Jason Babin, right? They don't really expand the edges that wide until it's third down. Like, they still do play traditional defenses on early downs. Like, they still will attempt to stop the run because they'd be dumb not to. And Jim Schwartz is a good coach, right? Like, they're still going to play single high safety looks on early downs. Like, they're still going to play, a traditional 4-down front with a shade nose and a 3 technique, or maybe kick him inside to a 2, but it's not going to be that different. What is different, at least schematically, it's not going to be that different. What is different is personnel. You go back to the middle of last season, and you had Miles and you had Jadeveon at the edges, but their defensive tackle rotation was Jordan Elliott, Taven Bryan, Perrion Winfrey, and Tommy Togiai. They didn't have any nose tackles. That's 3 4 3 techniques as your interior defensive line rotation. And your linebackers were JOK, who's phenomenal, and Deion Jones, who at one point was great. And then Tony Fields was their backup. So you have 3 admittedly undersized linebackers and a bunch of 3 techniques as your interior defensive linemen. And people wonder why they couldn't stop the run. Like, people just ran right at them. They were 30th in EPA per play given up against the run. You compare that to the personnel they have now, and you still got JOK, Anthony Walker's there obviously as well, but you got Dalvin Tomlinson, you got Siaki Ika, Jordan Elliott's still there, but he's going to be a 3 technique that they're not asking him to like stack and shed on a guard and play, I don't know, gap and a half is a controversial term, but you know what I mean? Like being able to like anchor down and peak, lock, peak, shed, make the tackle, all that kind of stuff. Like they're not asking him to do that. It's Jordan Elliott, you are a 3 technique. You play your B gap. We got Dalvin to play nose and steal A gaps for us. We got Siaki Ika, that early down, we can put him and Dalvin on the field together and they can just gum everything up inside and spill everything outside for JOK to go kill it. Like they're not trying to stop the run with the lightest interior column of your front 7 in the entire NFL. So that by itself, regardless of getting a new defensive coordinator, that by itself is going to be huge. Because if they're just average against the run, they're not even asking to be good. If they're just average, like you mentioned, their pass rushers are good and their DBs are insane. The rest will take care of itself. They just need to not give up like 5.5 yards per carry on early downs. That's all.
I think you're referring maybe to the Atlanta Falcon game, which was a good one. No Myles Garrett, no Jadeveon Clowney, and the Falcons basically, all right, we are running it over 67. See what you can do about it. And it was just absolutely in back. And the one time the Falcons actually did break the consecutive running play, I think they were just bored and decided they actually wanted to throw a football because there was no reason to. I mean, that game was played like a freshman high school football game where our guys are just bigger than your guys. So there's no reason we even have to go to a second play. We're just going to continue doing this because there's no way you can stop it. And there was no way of stopping
it. The Falcons called outside zone 57% of the time last year, by the way, on all their run plays, which is like by far first in the NFL. And I'm pretty sure that game alone skewed it by like 5% because they called outside zone like 11 times in a row. Like it was disgusting. And
I do remember the swing of about 8 of them in a row. So I certainly do remember that. There was, and we were leading up to that game and it was like, this is, and once we knew Myles and we knew about his injury before anybody else, and we knew it wasn't bad, but we knew it was also something where he was going to miss a little time. And, obviously, Clowney with, hey, here's, $6 more million. Can you at least do what you did last year? No, I'm going to do significantly less. And I'm even going to give less effort. So, so you got the Jekyll and Hyde of Jadeveon Clowney, and it just obviously led to just nothing but, just absolute chaos. Here's the tricky part though, Brett. The Brett is the schedule, obviously these, first 5 games over 6 weeks, 3 conference games right off the bat. Titans. I don't think the Titans are going to be good, but I've been through this before with the Browns. Oh, well, this team's not very good. And then next thing you know, guess what? They find a way to look good, and they usually find a way to look good against the Cleveland Browns. And then, of course, the one team in the NFL that if you have any questions, you go play the San Francisco 49ers. And if there's questions about your team, the San Francisco 49ers will expose you physically and just, dominate you. But normally defenses need time to gel, and it's an understood theory. You know what I'm saying? Practice reps are not the same as in-game reps, but they don't necessarily have the time because this could work out really well for them the way this early schedule is, or it could work out really bad for them. They could kind of maybe run away and hide a little bit because the rest of the division games are sporadically scheduled over, the remaining 12 games of the season. But if they got to find a way to chase because they're down early, and it's sporadically scheduled for the rest of the division games, that could really haunt them. This defense has got to be ready to go week 1.
Yeah, because they don't really get a break until Arizona in November. Like people look at the Colts game, they're like, "Oh, that's a winnable game." It's like I don't know. Colts to me is even less winnable not less winnable. Every game the Browns are talented. Like every game's winnable here. But to me, the Colts are a bigger challenge than the Titans even.
Well, sure.
Anthony Richardson's an absolute freak. Like they do have a good roster. They were just undone by an old quarterback that couldn't move and the worst right guard situation in the NFL last year. And it just led to a bunch of turnovers and they never really got out of that hole. But like, if you look at the Colts roster, like I think the Colts roster is better than the Titans roster. From everything I've heard from over there, like Anthony Richardson is legit and he could be a potential super weapon for them in due time. So they don't really get a break until Arizona in November, and I fully expect Cleveland to just dismantle them, like utterly dismantle them. But every game before that's hard. It's hard. They got all division games. You got Tennessee and Indy. You got San Francisco. Like Seattle's really good. And then
in Seattle,
which is loud. I go to a game up in Seattle every single year, and it never disappoints. And then, by the way, after the Arizona game, we're going right back to Baltimore. Then we're hosting the Steelers. It's like honestly one of the hardest schedules in the entire NFL. And this roster is good enough to still win double-digit games against it. But if they make the playoffs with this schedule, they will be extraordinarily battle-tested and one of the more battle-tested teams in the league.
And that's what's crazy about the AFC is there could easily be a team that wins double-digit games, and they have the same seat that you and I have for playoff action, on the couch with a cat on the lap, or, a pit bull over here is what we have on the lap in this house.
There will be a team in the AFC North that has an above 500 record and probably should have made the playoffs and would have made the playoffs in the NFC, and they don't make it.
Yep, no question. And, for Browns fans and Browns listeners here, that's something that they cannot afford with all the questions, obviously, that they have as far as the futures of their head coach and, of course, their general manager. We'll see the way it all plays out. We're going to close it out here. We're going to get some, thoughts here on, where Brett thinks the Browns will eventually finish here. Get some thoughts on the AFC overall. Again, everybody, appreciate you all for sticking along for the ride. Segment 3, Jeff Lloyd, your host here at Locked On Browns, joined by Brett Kollmann, of course. You can check out the Bootleg Football Podcast. You can also check out the Film Room over at Brett's YouTube page. Fantastic work. As always, appreciate the everydayers who make Locked On Browns their first listen. Join the crowd. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Notifications on audio-wise. Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. Now, Brett, you get into this, and everybody in the playoffs, maybe AFC Championship. You set the stepping stones. Stepping stone is try to win the North, because God forbid, first things first, you would like to host at least a playoff game, make your lives a little bit easier there. And that's the one thing I think the Browns do have going for them is everybody views the Bengals as top dog in the AFC North right now, and rightfully so, and fair enough. But it's never been an issue for the Browns with the Bengals. And even last year, I think if the last game of the season maybe was Deshaun Watson versus Joe Burrow when he was a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more, and maybe it would have gone a little bit better. It's one of those quirks where the Browns just match up well. They have enough secondary to play against the Bengals. The Bengals have their issues with the Browns offensive line and Nick Chubb, obviously. They've never been able to handle Myles Garrett. So, they can bring in whatever left tackle they want to. Until I see Myles Garrett not dominate the Cincinnati Bengals, I am not going to believe that Myles Garrett will not dominate. And as much as Bengal fans want to kid with me, we got Orlando Brown Jr. That's fine. You still put he's over on the right side.
A lot better.
Exactly. So, we can just put Myles over on that side if we want now. Or guess what? Now he's got to block. Jordan Williams now got to block Zadarius Smith, or maybe he's got to block Okoronkwo. And now they have so many edges. These edges can start to go to the interior and rush from there. So we'll see how that all works out. But the stepping stone here, and it is, I think everybody is improved in this division. I think the Browns have the opportunity to be vastly improved, but this is where it gets to, like when you and your buddies, oh, yeah. All right, we'll put some money. Ooh, money on it. Ooh. That's where you get to like the hesitation part, because it's like, I've been here before and I don't know if I can do it again.
On the topic of the Bengals, by the way, I see and this is going to sound super weird. Well, maybe not to Browns fans. I think Browns fans expect this. I see the Browns to the Bengals as the Bengals are to the Chiefs, right? Just like a really, really tough matchup.
It's not even a schematic thing. It's okay. They're better than us there. They're better than us there. And there's nothing we can do about it.
And so actually here is a hot take that maybe Browns fans might not agree with. But it's a positive one. Am I crazy? As somebody who covers the Browns every day, am I crazy to think that Martin Emerson is their best corner?
he brings a unique style that nobody else does because of his size, because of his length. And he's just got that. And and Pete Smith does a ton of shows with me. I just won't shut up mentality. I am going to annoy you for 60 minutes. Like when I watch cornerback play and I watch prospects, I'm looking for the guy who doesn't shut up. And even still, because guess what? You just beat me for 35. I'm still over here, and it's like those guys are a menace and a nuisance. But it was the Charger game, and the Chargers decided on 4th and 7, and it was at the 43, but still, you were inside you basically on your own side of the 50. All right, So yeah, it makes sense. We're going to go to Mike Williams here to close out a game, and Martin Emerson basically just locked him down, deflected the ball away, and you even saw the Browns defensive players like, well, kids got some. And one other thing on that is, I have a couple of contacts within the Eagles organization. Eagles went out there last year for joint practices. 2 days in, I got like 3 text messages. Y'all stole Martin Emerson. Absolutely stole Martin Emerson. And basically what they said was the tape didn't look like he was that athletic. We didn't think, and the length translates and covers up for some of the weakness in athletic testing. Obviously the length and the physical size and the fact that he's going to bump you hard enough that you're not going to get to top speed to basically show that you're faster than him, because he's going to hit you hard enough that he will be able to compensate on whatever you do to him over it. But no, I agree. And this is what led to all the Newsome questions this offseason. And no, it's not. It's a great situation to be in when you have 3 good cornerbacks. And I truly think this is going to be the first year where they're going to do it and say, well, the biggest threat is the 5'9" slot guy. So Denzel, why don't you just go inside? And you want to know what? I'm not. Yeah, exactly.
What was crazy though, and I think this is going to be the big thing that we see at the shift to Schwartz. They were 21st in cover 1 last year, despite having all those dudes at corner. And I truly think that Martin is just an absolute dog. Like I think he's one of the top. Like if I'm doing my own top 100, Martin Emerson's on my top 100. I'm not saying he's in like top 50, but he's in my top 100. I think he's the best corner on the team. Not just because he's so good and physical and press, but like he's way better in off coverage than I expected. Like his feet and his hips are really good, super instinctive. His ball production's insane. Like one of the top 3 corners in the entire league in terms of ball production on targets. He's phenomenal. And so like I do expect them to play more cover 1 this year just because they can. Like what are you going to do? Like you got 3 good corners. Like, and I'm not saying that Denzel and Newsome are bad. No, I'm saying they're good. I just think Martin's even better. And not to mention they have great safeties with a bunch of range too. So like if I'm not a defense coordinator, but if I'm Jim Schwartz and I get into 3rd medium, I'm in cover 1 because all my guys are better than your guys. Go beat me. I don't think very many teams can.
And that was the biggest thing last year when the communication, the verbiage, and this is what you see Jim Schwartz doing to this point. Well, eliminate it. Like, I mean, well, why? And the other thing is if I think my guys are good, okay, what do I want you to do? I want you to focus on the guy in front of you and make sure he doesn't catch the ball. I'm not worried about you to tell the safeties. I mean, it's paralysis by analysis, which ultimately did him in last year, obviously. And why would you take such talented? It would be like the Bulls saying, well, let's make sure Scottie Pippen gets 25 shots today, even though Michael scores 38 a night for the last decade. We want it. No. You play what your best players are capable of doing. And that was the biggest nuisance and annoyingness of last year. It was just not letting great players go out and be great players. Well, Brett, we're going to put you on a spot here. Look, 7 teams from the AFC. Browns fans want to know, obviously, do we get to experience the light joys we did in January of 2021, where we got to see the Cleveland Browns play some playoff football? Do you think we get a repeat here, or is it going to be back to the drawing board? And hopefully not, because that's going to lead to head coaching conversations, possible general manager conversations, although it will give me a lot of content possibly.
So I'll run through the 7 playoff teams I expect from the AFC. Obviously, Kansas City, Chargers as well. That's 2 of them. Jacksonville makes 3. I think Buffalo and Miami make it 5. And there's 2 spots in the AFC North. I do think Cincinnati is one of them. So it comes down to Baltimore versus Cleveland. If Cleveland stays healthy, yes, they make it. because I over history, I trust them to stay healthier than Baltimore. If Cleveland is not healthy, because I remember a couple of years ago, I went out for the Arizona game, and JOK got hurt in that game, Kareem got hurt, and they never, like, I feel like half the starters got hurt that year, right? Totally derailed everything.
And JJ Watt finished what was already a broken Baker Mayfield that day. So.
Yeah, that's right. Baker did play in that game and got broken again. They can't afford any other games like that one. But if they stay healthy, yes, I do think they slightly make it over Baltimore.
The thing with Baltimore that's going to be interesting is Lamar transitioning to this new offense, and to say, oh, well, Stetson Bennett looked good in that offense. So you certainly got to believe Lamar Jackson should do well there. But this is a team that's never been able to figure out how wide receivers and he work. And, if it starts off slow, does Lamar go back to, all right, well, somebody better be open in 2.1 seconds, or, my moneymaker is going to get us yards, and we'll just continue to do what we've always done here. And you can call the system whatever you want to call the system. The system is 8's going to do what 8's going to do, and usually that leads to W. So that's always the craziest thing about the Ravens.
My big thing, I reserve the right to change my answer by October if Deshaun doesn't look good. That's the
I would say everything. We put it to week 6, because by week 6 we'll know what the tail is going to be. Because if this team is, God forbid, sitting 1-4, even 2-3, it's going to take a yeoman's effort to find a way to get back up that hill. Because the other thing is where your coach is at, where your general manager is at, contract wise. They start off slow. Now all the outside comes in. All the outside noise comes in, which becomes the most difficult part to focus.
Yeah, it really comes down to, can they start fast enough to stay afloat while everything kind of gets going, right? Like, they just need to survive the first 6 weeks. If they can survive the first 6 weeks, I feel real good about it.
No doubt.
But those first 6 games are like, they might be the most important 6-game stretch the Browns have had in I don't know how many years you want to put.
But even still, this was a team trying to close it out in 2020 to get to the playoffs. But this would be even more important because, again, there's just so much on the line, and then it could possibly bring in outside factors, which could just make for a really, really messy situation, which is always the way it works out. And as you people know, the factor is sadness.
Stakes are higher this year.
No question about it. He is Brett Kollmann. Guys, make sure you're checking out the Film Room. Make sure you are checking him out, co-hosting the Bootleg Football podcast. Check out his YouTube page. Great work over there. Obviously, tons of teams covered here. You got the AFC North. There's episodes that all run between like 55 an hour long. You've got all the AFC North coverage. So go ahead, check all of that out. Make sure you're following at Brett Kollmann, of course, the traditional German spelling, folks. So yes, even though it looks a little different, it is still pronounced the same. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, at Locked On Browns. The YouTube page, the Everydayers. Appreciate you guys. You are certainly the fabric on this show is built. And of course, that the Locked On Podcast Network is built. So join the Everydayers. Make Locked On Browns your first listen. Subscribe on the YouTube page. Notifications on. Always available. Always free. Wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.